When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with a learning disability. I couldn't read. And my mom took me to a lot of different places, and I ended up at an eye doctor's office, and I did get a pair of glasses that didn't really help, but it made me nearsighted. And as I progressed through school, the way I got through school was by memorizing. That's how I got through. But my eyes got progressively worse and worse. And I left the eye chart in here. I couldn't see the big E on the eye chart. I was really, disabled. And I got through optometry school, and I met what do they call a developmental optometrist, holistic optometrist. I grew up on the East Coast. And his name was Dr. Al Shankman, Albert Shankman. And I went to him and he said two things. He said, first of all, your left eye wanders out, and that's why you always have double vision. And then second of all, he said, your nearsightedness is due basically because of tension that you put into your eyes to get through school. So I went through his program, and within 6 months, my learning disability went away, and I didn't need my glasses. And I haven't worn lenses in, 40 years. So it was a really huge epiphany. And then I went back to my optometry school, and I told my professors what happened, and they respected me, but they said, we can't invest into what you changed. You're basically on your own. And so I knew that I wasn't going to get support from the allopathic people. So I decided to devote my career to helping people improve their vision because I was able to do it. And one of the things I would say is that, from a genetic standpoint, the medical community really says it's all genetics, like your nephew. And there is a field called epigenetics, which I know you all know of. Bruce Lipton is one of those people. And basically with that, it's saying that we're more than our genes, and that, we can actually change our genetics if we do that. I've made some notes, and let me just say, if you ever come across the Bates method or eye exercises, put it out of your head, because it's just quackery. And my friend and I were in the back going, that's what we want to go into. Because I was a radical back then. And so, this whole thing around you can't improve your vision, and it's like, I think more people would come to see me if they could penetrate the intense obstacle that's been created in eye care saying you can't improve your eyes. Basically, eye care is about symptom management. You've got a certain condition, needles, drugs, and surgery, pays for their Mercedes. Everything is a new procedure. And, in this state, now it's laser surgery, optometry, laser surgery. They want to have us do that, and Botox injections, because that's where the money is. And, when I go to the meetings, I go, I don't want any of that. What about the functional parts of vision? Because most eye exams are pretty incomplete. We're going to do a test in a minute to see why you're not focusing and why you're getting blur. I've done this test on everybody else, but anyway. So I want to start, and I want to speak about trauma. And, everybody that comes into the body in this lifetime is going to be dealing with trauma. Whether it's birth trauma, whether it's prenatal, whether it's postnatal, we're all dealing with trauma. And what trauma does to our brain is it sets up a certain track, like a certain programming. And since the eyes originate from the brain, the eyes are the only part of the brain that sit outside the cranial vault. So the eyes are really brain tissue. And so when we start absorbing trauma in our body, at whatever age, it really impacts our nervous system. And there's a wonderful theory that was created by a neuroscientist named Stephen Porges, and it's called the polyvagal theory. Have you ever heard of it? Mm-hmm. You could certainly Google it. Dr. Porges now lives in Florida. He's from Chicago, actually. That's where he taught. And he has a whole theory on trauma and the evolution of trauma and the idea that we start off in the reptilian phase, but we're mammals, so we're meant to be empathic, we're meant to have eye contact, but the vagus nerve, which connects that, the head area with the body, that there's an interference in our evolution moving from reptilian to mammalian, and it has to do with trauma, and he calls it the fight, flight, freeze response. And vision, because we've got so many nerves in our eyes and around our eyes, cranial nerve 3, 4, and 6 from the craniosacral, Melinda's a craniosacral therapist too, that impacts our visual system. And what happens is that we start blurring things out into the distance as a way to pull our world in and protect us. That's what myopia is. But what we do is we create this hard shell, and we go to the doctor because we can't see in the distance. He or she is reinforcing the trauma when we get a pair of nearsighted glasses. That's kind of the setup. And so then you just start hardening more and more and more. And this is where the traumatic experiences come in. And the higher the number of the myopia, the earlier the trauma happened. And that's just in the myopia part. But we sometimes equate eyesight and glasses and 20/20 as everything, but that's not vision. Vision is how the eyes and the brain and the body work together, and the 20/20 reading is one aspect of vision. It's not the entire aspect of vision. And what I find is that there's certain emotional kind of patterns, like in farsightedness, it's more about liver and anger and pushing the world away. And astigmatism, it's about confusion and twisting the world and creating a warping. And in myopia, it's fear. I'm being caught in the past. And I have the perfect prescription for Ava that we're going to do in a few minutes. So each of you is going to kind of be interacting with the programming that your eyes are dealing with right now. And a lot of it is kind of unconscious. But the thing I can say about trauma is there's hypervigilance, there's freeze, so I'm freezing, I become paralyzed. There can be social withdrawal, and there's difficulty trusting oneself and the environment. Those are kind of the four things. And the eye muscles respond by tightening. And it isn't just the 6 eye muscles that hold the eye in the eye socket, but it's the tiny ligament muscles that are in the lens of the eye. And so there are targeted exercises that can work on releasing the tension in both of those. Now, cataracts is a hardening of the lens. When we develop a cataract, we're saying to ourselves unconsciously, I don't want to look out, and I don't want people to look in. So I'm going to harden up and create enough opacification to stop that. Now, there are also some, antioxidants that can help reverse cataracts, but that's basically the thing. So not only is the trauma piece psychological, but it's also neurological and it's physical. So you have to work on all these different levels. When I work with kids, and I work with a lot of special needs kids, a lot of them are caught in that fight, flight, freeze response. So doing something called the primitive survival reflex exercises helps release the nervous system from that hypervigilance state, which can turn into myopia. It really can. Like for example, myopia, and I'm speaking firsthand, I wanted to stay small. I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to be seen. That was my nearsighted programming that created that. Taking my glasses off was a very scary thing for me. I didn't feel safe in the world. I didn't understand what was going on. So my coping strategy was, I'll just become nearsighted. And so, can you heal it? Yes. And the deal is introducing in small steps the support of saying, okay, I don't need to be as fearful. I don't have to stay in paralysis. I can really open up my peripheral vision and be empowered about it. Because again, for all the trauma, we want to tunnel our peripheral. But when we tunnel our peripheral, our proprioception shuts off and our vestibular, our balance mechanism, goes away. That's why when all we do is stay at our phone, we actually are inducing this peripheral tunneling, and our balance and orientation gets thrown off, and our proprioceptive relationships to our body tend to change. So what I'm going to be introducing today is ways that you can feel safe to practice coming out with your vision. So that's kind of the trauma piece. I think breathing comes into it. So doing this somatic work with sound is a way to penetrate the paralysis in the tissues. That's why I use sound. And one of my trainings was in a practice called continuum movement. Emily Conrad was the founder of it. And in that particular modality, which I still, reference, is using different sounds into the body and especially into the eyes, and that can create a real release because sound penetrates the defense strategies in a way where certain things like color and light, vibration, also penetrates the defense strategies. And so it's, I remember reading, Van der Kolk's book on The Body Doesn't Lie.
The body keeps the score.
Yeah, the cat body keeps the score. And I remember we were in a continuum movement retreat, and all of us as teachers, we were going through this traumatic release around, wow, the body is really telling us, it's informing us. And my part was being able to translate what the eyes are saying, because the eyes are a way that I can interpret the scroll of energy and history. So that's kind of, my take on trauma. Now, the thing with mast cell, is it called mast cell degeneration? That's what it is. This came up a lot with people who either got the vaccine for COVID or got COVID. So that's where I saw it more. But it's a dysregulation on a cellular level. It's like you're not completely unified in cellular communication. And of course, the eyes, since they require such a high degree of nutrient support, one of my teachers used to say the eyes and the brain make up 2% of the body weight and use 25% of the food intake. So 25% of what we eat goes to this, very intensive area. So when you have mast cell degeneration, there's a dysregulation on cellular communication. And,
Would that be the same as mast cell activation?
it could be. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be either overactivation or activation or degeneration.
Okay.
And a lot of these are labels that, quite honestly, I don't think the doctors really know. Because it comes in where you could be exposed to mold, it could be environmental overwhelm, it could be toxicities. So when we do iridology, I'm going to look closely at your iris patterns, the pigments, and that's going to tell me about a genetic blueprint where you might have some weaknesses, and what we would say is that these are nurture points, like a liver cleanse, or you need to watch your pancreas, or you need to, support your kidneys more, or thyroid. So when we get to that, we'll talk about, a lot of times what I see with your situation is there's a gut dysbiosis. Something is going on in the gut area, And again, I can see a lot of things in your digestive system through the iridology. So hang in there with that. The other thing I want to talk about is grief, because that's another thing that we're all dealing with, grief and loss. And what we tend to do with that in our vision is, again, it's another narrowing of our peripheral. It's about overusing the maculas. So the macula makes up less than 1% of the real estate of our eyes, but it's the most fundamental part of our being able to see detail. Without the macula, everything is going to be distorted or blurred. Now, the macula is the left brain, because that's the rational, detail-oriented, and everything else, the peripheral, is the right brain. What's happened in our society over the last 100 years at least, due to the Industrial Revolution and the fact that we're on digital screens, is that the maculas tend to get overused. So myopia is a place where there's overuse of macula. We think about more information coming to us. We can go to ChatGPT now. The AI has come in. The new thing that's coming is virtual reality glasses. And I'm involved in some research around the negative effects of VR, because we're going to stop using our phone. We're just going to wear the glasses. We're going to be able to scroll through our emails, and we're going to be able to, it's just getting so insane. And the split in our vision by having these VR glasses and having a whole other alternate reality is kind of hard for the brain. It's hard for our nervous system, and it's hard for our systemic and metabolic health. So, VR is coming. And the other thing I want to say about grief is that cataracts, one of the words where it comes from is waterfall. So it's a frozen waterfall, like the water is out of balance in a cataract. And whether our eyes are dry or we have overacting tears, it could be either of those things. So that's kind of the grief situation. And again, I'll talk about ways through iridology that maybe you can work through the grief. All right, let's see. I want to talk just a bit about the spiritual part of vision. So the eyes have been called the organ of light. We need light in order to see. And light is a food, and it affects our endocrine system, our nervous system, and our eyes. 25% of the pathways in the eyes go to non-visual pathways like our hypothalamus, the pineal gland. And there's been talk about something called the calcification of the pineal gland. So fluoride in the water, EMF exposure. These are hardening the pineal, but the pineal is the part of our body partly that helps us connect to the Schumann resonance, which is that slow wave in nature. And what I'm seeing is that more and more people have no idea about the Schumann resonance, and we're going to connect to that today. So there's the physical eyes, using them together, but there's the third eye and how well that part of our chakra system is allowing light in, like if we're hypersensitive, if we're afraid of the light. And then there's the red light, the photobiomodulation, which helps us improve our mitochondria function. And there was a study done in 2021 at the University College of London, which said that if you use red light every day, it can actually reduce macular degeneration. It improved the visual acuity by almost 17% over a 12-week period. Some people are now even including something called methylene blue, which is an enhancer of being able to absorb the red light. And so if you're really into the mitochondria conversation, using the red light is kind of essential. You want to do it in the morning. But I have some IT people who work on a computer all day. They're doing a morning red light session and they're doing an end of the day red light session, which helps release the oxidative stress and inflammation that comes from using computers. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say. Yeah, I think that the other thing I would say about the spiritual part is that this morning, or in a little bit, we're going to work with the yolk prisms. These are special prism glasses. Some of you, maybe Melinda used them. I'm not sure Ava used them. And these change how the light enters the eyes. Like I had a lady the other day with myopia, and I gave her one of the yolk prisms, and she said, "Oh my God, I'm feeling happy." It was amazing. It had nothing to do with her sight. It just changed how the energy was coming into the eyes. And she had like -10. She was even more than, other people. And so I gave her the base ups, and she's emailing me every day, and she's saying, this is like a way that I can be like an antidepressant because it changes the light into the eyes. So the lenses are powerful, especially if you use a lens that is challenging to you. When you use a lens that you get from the 20/20 eye chart, all that does is weaken your eyes. It doesn't strengthen it. But there are vision exercise glasses and lenses and patches and things that, I can introduce to you today, especially in this setting, that might create a switch, a flick of like, oh, habitually I was seeing this way. You've given me a whole new perspective, and that creates a cascading effect of, improving not only the eyesight, but the vision. So that's a lot of words. I'm going to end my rant and just see if this has triggered anything either in a comment or a question before we move more to the practical exercises.
Well, I guess the digestive part was one thing I've always struggled with, and I always forget to talk about it. So
Yeah. So the gut is directly related to the eyes. When I was studying functional medicine, they would talk about the brain, but then I would go, well, what about the eyes? And they go, oh yeah, the eyes. Yeah, it's the similar thing. Inflammation, oxidative stress, toxicities, all of those things will create deteriorating eyesight, for sure.
Have anything also about the connection between liver and eyes in...
Big time. In Chinese medicine, there is that. And then also the liver and the gallbladder are the organs that help us absorb our eye nutrients better because they're fat soluble. So like I've had hundreds of people come to me with dry eye syndrome. And they go, oh, I'm taking all these supplements and I'm doing this and that and the other. And I look at their liver through the iridology and I go, oh, you've got some liver signs that you're eating it, but your liver is not helping you absorb the healthy fats. So this is where then a liver cleanse comes in, or doing some, a beet juice kind of a cleanse to help the liver be able to absorb those fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A or lutein and zeaxanthin, which are essential for the macula. And once the liver starts absorbing better, the eye problems go away. So they're eating everything well, but they're not absorbing it. So the liver cleanse is the key, the secret that allows them. Now, in your case, what I'm curious about is the functional part, like how your brain and eyes are wired up. And there's a very simple test that we're going to do in a minute that will help you. Anybody else have anything that's of resonance? Otherwise, we'll move more into the practical side. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. Fire away.
Because I feel like we could go really deep into this.
Yeah.
I'm curious if instead of explaining anatomy to me, do you have like a handout or something I could look at? Because I don't really actually know.
Well, let's just see. Let's just see if a handout is going to do it, or maybe your personal experience.